Welcome to episode 7 of the Confidence Reset for multi-passionate language learners who are looking for motivation, courage, and confidence in their studies. I upload this series daily on my channel, Language Travel Adoptee, from Monday to Thursday, so definitely make sure you have your notification bell turned on and subscribed, knowing you're not alone and gradually shifting your mindset to confidence along the way. And today we are talking all about regrets in language learning, and I know that so many language learners I've talked to can resonate with this, right? Because there are so many things that we think about in language learning as, I missed that opportunity. Why didn't I talk to this person? Why didn't I have that courage and confidence that I see other language learners have to do this and this? And it can also go on the other end, right? So why did I even say that? I shouldn't have said that. I was so stupid in front of that native speaker or making that mistake, etc. I should have just kept my mouth closed. We're talking about regrets, but we're also going to talk about self-forgiveness because it is such a critical part of being a language learner and really cultivating that long-term confidence and joy in our studies. So I'm going to tell you about my experience. There was one time when I was studying abroad back in 2017, and I don't know if you know him, you probably do if you have learned Italian, but Italiano Automatico, I think his name is Alberto. I can't even remember, it's been so long, but I remember seeing him in person. We were in Florence and he happened to be walking by, and this was when his channel was really small, but I still enjoyed watching his content because at that point I was learning a lot of Italian. I was just so shocked to see him. He was super tall and I just couldn't believe that I saw from a distance someone from the YouTube space and someone who clearly loved languages. And I remember looking back on that and wondering, why didn't I just go up and talk to him? I am so stupid for not seeking that opportunity. It was such a missed opportunity. The second one is when I was also in Italy, and I was invited by an Italian guy that I was dating at the time to go to this party with his friends. It was a get-together at a home. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. Me being an introvert, I was in a room full of really loud Italians who already knew everyone in the space. They were not talking in the Italian like the Italian guy that I was dating was talking to me, right? So there was just so much stimulation for my introverted brain. At the end though, I looked back on that experience and I thought, I've totally wasted that. I regret that I didn't say anything. Like I literally did not talk at all. I was just frozen in my seat the whole entire time. I was like, that was a perfect time to improve my Italian. What are you doing, Emily? You are in Italy. You didn't even take the chance. Definitely no, I have had my share of regrets in language learning. There's so many important parts to the story because it is easy to feel bad and struggle with forgiving ourselves in those moments, especially when we really process what happened and look back on them. We see parts of ourselves in our past as tied to our present identities. I'm such a bad language learner. I can't ever get it right. Why am I so introverted? Thoughts like that. In those moments of really looking back and replaying that scenario in our heads to make us feel even worse, we perceive what our flaws are as language learners. It makes us feel really vulnerable, and it's scary because being vulnerable goes against everything our survival instinct has taught us to do. And also considering our education systems around the world that do punish, to a sense, any mistakes that we make, our impulse is to try to hide it or downplay it or just feel really bad about ourselves and talk to ourselves in order to punish ourselves in a sense. There's also a lot of shame. So the typical advice for self-forgiveness and really thinking about our regrets is learning from our experiences, which is totally true. But I want to go further and specify for us here, meet your past self where they were in that moment. Really look at the facts first, as if you were a scientist. So thinking about seeing Alberto in Florence and knowing that I didn't go up to talk to him. Well, he was surrounded by a lot of people. He was a lot taller, and that made me also feel a lot more intimidated to even go up to this person. And we were also in such a crowded area. I was really nervous about even thinking about talking to him in Italian. For the second scenario, I could say, yes, I was in a big room with Italians that knew each other. And then I would look back and think, what narrative have I been building in my head around this story that is really distorting my perception of that situation? Journaling all about this helps. It really helps to get everything in our thoughts out on a page somewhere, right? Because in our heads, anything can be true. But when it's on the paper, it really helps us to separate you and your worth as a person from your thoughts that you have, right? Because thoughts aren't always the truth. Dr. Brené Brown also says shame and guilt cannot grow when brought to the light, but it thrives in the dark. So even this simple act of journaling can really help bring your thoughts and your perceptions of that story into the light and at least be looked at a little bit more objectively. And after finishing this exercise, exercise, I invite you guys to think about the mantra, I forgive myself. I did the best that I could with the information that I was given. Of course, our perception of these language learning regrets, right? They are perceptions. They are built on our thoughts, which then influence our behavior and our then lifestyle and reality around us. So what if we shift our thoughts from the ground up to rebuild that narrative that we have? This can be all accessed by journaling, like I suggested. But then I also welcome us after that exercise to think about how to shift to a more neutral perspective. My example with the huge Italian party, right? I would say for years after looking back on that experience, I constantly told myself and tried to shame myself, why aren't you more extroverted? You wasted everything. But shifting to a more neutral perspective that really keeps the objective facts in mind, that would probably lead me more to say something like my introversion needed more time to process what was happening around me because there was so much stimuli. So of course, this process is going to be even slower in another language when everyone is just talking as fast and as colloquially as they can to their friends. All of this done within a social interaction that I wasn't prepared for. But I still got a behind the scenes look at what a real Italian get together truly is like. I showed up. That was enough. That's all I had to do. And next time, I think I have an idea about what I can do to make this a little safer by even communicating a little bit better with who brought me to the party in the first place. And I may need some more help and support during that party. So you really see how we can slowly flip the script on what missed opportunities we perceive to have and now regret as language learners now. It is so crucial for us to look more at self-forgiveness as a true tool for our language learning confidence. So I really invite you to do that exercise from today. If you are looking for more language confidence after that exercise, then definitely check out this next video.